Hey everybody, this is my first video. Welcome to my bathroom. I'm in here because this is where I tend to go when I'm trying to have some privacy and make sure my kids can't hear what I'm saying on the phone. And so this is a place of privacy and a quiet and a sanctuary, and I'm hoping to do a whole series of videos about topics on my blog that need a little bit of sanctuary. This video is inspired by a reader who emailed me just yesterday. She's just been completely throttled by spiritual abuse, and the thing that broke my heart about her letter was just the shame that I could hear in it about how she felt like she was not coping, not doing well, not rising to the challenge of recovering from spiritual abuse. She apologized to me a couple times in the letter, and which really broke my heart because she really didn't have anything to apologize for, but I could completely understand why she felt that way, because that is very much how I felt after the world crumbled around my feet. I went through a process similar to what she's going through right after college when I discovered I'd been depressed for a long time, and I really questioned everything about my faith, because faith was such a coping mechanism for me, a really unhealthy coping mechanism. And when I realized that, I wondered whether anything in my faith was real, whether I had just made it up as sort of an elaborate way of getting out of my problems. When I was in that dark pit, I thought for sure that I was just a shameful, dirty, pathetic loser for not being able to get through what I was going through. But when I look back, I realize I was incredibly brave, and that I was incredibly hurt and struggling, and that it was okay for me to be in that place for as long as it took me, because I went through a really, really deep pit to get out of the pain that I was in. So the main thing that I told this reader that I wanted her to know was that was this, and I'm going to repeat it to you. You are not doing this wrong. If you are ashamed of the way you're coping, if you're ashamed of your lack of faith, or you're dropping friends, or staying up way too late, or even, as this reader confessed, drinking alcohol a little too much, I want to tell you that even if your coping mechanisms maybe aren't wise, and that it might be better for you to stop doing them, that it is not that you are doing things wrong. It is not because you're weak or pathetic or a loser. It's because what you're going through is terribly hard. You are not going to come through it without struggle and bewilderment and pain. I really thought when I was struggling that if I could just get my act together, I would stop hurting so much. But the truth was, I just had to feel what I was going through in order to get through to the other side. So again, I just want to say to you today, you are not doing this wrong. You are doing your best. You might choose wiser pathways. If you're self-harming or doing something like that, you might need to get some counseling. But just because you are struggling and not looking like $1,000,000 right now does not make you pathetic or a loser or somehow not managing, because there is no way to manage a process like this. The other thing I wanted to address that she brought up in her post, in her letter, is that she could not hear God anymore, that she could not sense His presence close to her, and that just filled her with panic. And I really identify with that, because at various points in my life, God has gone quiet on me too, and I occasionally would like to give Him a good talking to about why He seems to disappear right when we need Him most. But I think that there are some reasons that happens, and the main one is, and I think this is something that I've figured out just from talking to friends of mine, but I think if you are clinically depressed, God goes quiet. I think those two things are related. I don't know if that's all and forever for everybody, but that is my experience, and I've talked to at least 3 other friends who've had that same experience. So if you are depressed, just know that God's silence does not mean that He is non-existent or that you are a terrible, unfaithful person. It might be the chemicals in your brain. The other thing I want to say about God's absence, or feeling like he's absent when we're going through something like this, is I think a reader wrote to me a long time ago about going through domestic abuse, and her being in the domestic abuse was all tied up in her mission field work and in her faith. And she said that she didn't actually mind God going quiet because she knew that in her abusive marriage, her husband was constantly performing and getting her attention so that she would think he was great. And that actually was part of the abuse. And the thing about God, the real God that we serve, is he is not trying to prove anything to you, and he doesn't need you to prove anything to him. I wonder whether God gives us some space when we're processing hurt like this so that we can make up our own minds without pressure from him. I don't know that. That might not be helpful for everybody because it feels like abandonment, but I do think that God is incredibly not needing us to feel any particular way about him, and that if we have terrible, horrible feelings about him, he is absolutely okay with that. And I think that that is one of the reasons why when Jesus talks about a millstone being put around those who make little ones suffer, that is because of God's anger and having to give his beloved people space when they've been hurt so terribly by those who inflict spiritual abuse on other people. So I guess I'm just going to wrap up today by saying this again. You're not doing this wrong. I also want to say that if God has gone silent, that still doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. In fact, it might mean either that you have chemical imbalances or that your brain has really gone on the fritz, understandably, or it might mean that God has given you space to believe what you actually really want to believe about him and not what other people have told you to believe about him. Your faith in God might be reborn into something that dispenses with what abusive people have told you about God. So, dear readers, I welcome you to my bathroom and to just a time together where we can share honesty and brokenness and being real about how hard it is to walk this path of love and forgiveness when people are crappy. So, all right, all, have a wonderful day.